Well, the conventional wisdom, as such, the frankly insane conventional wisdom, is that if you raise taxes, you slow down an economy. All of us have memorized this because ever since Ronald Reagan came into office, with that whack job, Mr. Laffer, at his side, and David Stockman and Grover Norquist and the whole Starve the Beast crowd and the Destroy Government crowd and the Hate Democracy, Small D Democracy crowd, they have been promoting this mantra that somehow if the rich among us have their taxes raised, then they will no longer be interested in paying your or my paychecks. And the old cliche, I never saw a poor man give somebody a job. Well, first of all, it's a lie. Most jobs are created in the United States by small businesses, and most businesses are started by people in the middle class. But nonetheless, that's the conventional wisdom. How do we push back on that? Larry Beinhart wrote Wag the Dog, The Librarian, The Fog Facts, Searching for Truth in the Land of Spin, a new novel, Salvation Boulevard. His website is Larry Beinhart, BEINHART.com. He's written some brilliant stuff, but to this topic, some of the most important, in my opinion, brilliant work that Larry Beinhart has ever done has been recently published on AlterNet.org, The Myth of Tax Cuts Stimulating the Economy, etc. Larry, I'm so grateful you can come on our show. Welcome to the program.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me on, Tom. It's really a pleasure.
What was your starting point on this? So, other than common sense, I have not seen any good, or maybe I'm just missing them, any good commentaries that have so succinctly and tightly pulled together the fact that when you raise taxes on the rich, you stimulate the economy, as what you've written.
Well, I was listening to all these guys during the campaign, and everybody says, we have to have tax cuts to stimulate the economy.
Yeah, even Democrats are saying that.
Everybody was saying it. It's a universal mantra, and we had just had it happen right before our eyes. George Bush cut taxes. The economy went into the tank, so he cut taxes some more. It certainly didn't recover in a healthy way, and then it crashed. So I'm looking at this series of two tax cuts not doing what was claimed. So I decided to take a look at the economy and tax cuts. No, I didn't find it anywhere else, which bothered me. I mean, a lot of these things that I find, I kind of say, well, how come this is not the common wisdom instead of what? Anyway, so I took a look, and I found some really interesting patterns. I think the most interesting one is we've had basically three big crashes since we've instituted the income tax. Income tax was instituted by constitutional amendment in 1913, and we used it to finance the First World War.
Although it was used during Lincoln's time, by the way.
It was, but it was...
That was a bit of an anomaly.
Yeah, but it was judged unconstitutional.
Yeah.
And so they passed a constitutional amendment so they could do it. So basically, if you're talking about income taxes, you're talking about 1913 to the present.
Right.
Okay. So after the war, starting about in the 20s, they started, the taxes were up around 77% or 70% for the richest people. And we're only talking about top marginal rates here.
Right.
Top marginal tax rates around 70%. There's no war going on. They decide to cut taxes, and you immediately have this pattern ensues. You get a boom. The boom turns into a bubble, and then you get the crash of 29. And the crash is accompanied by massive bank failures, and it's accompanied by in those days a depression.
Right.
Okay.
So it looks like in the teens and 20s, the high taxes on the rich acted as a stabilizer, as ballast for the ship of state, as it were.
Well,
let's
it acts as a lot of things. And, first let's deal with facts and then let's move on to theory. The facts are there were tax cuts, boom, bubble, crash, bank failures, depression.
Right.
Then we get next really big tax cut is under Reagan. And Reagan actually has a series of tax cuts. He takes taxes down from 70% first to 50, and then he cuts them down to 38.5. Then in 1987, there's another crash, and it was called at the time the worst since 1929. It was called Black Monday. A lot of the bubble that had been created after the tax cuts was, surprise, in real estate. And there were bank failures, more bank failures than in the Great Depression. It was called the Savings and Loan Crisis, and there had to be a massive bailout.
Right.
Okay? Then along comes George Bush II. Taxes were already pretty low. Top marginal rate was 39% under Clinton, and he took it down to 35%. And then he added additional tax cuts on capital gains, which is unearned income, and on inheritance taxes. And basically we had the same pattern. We had a big bubble. A lot of it was in real estate, and we had a crash. And crash is accompanied by massive bank failures, and depending on what we do subsequently, it will be accompanied by either a recession or an actual depression.
Right.
Okay. Now here's the really weird part. The four greatest periods of growth in modern U.S. economic history. World War II is number one, of course, 1941 to 45. Top tax rate varied between 80 and 94%. Second period is post-war under Truman Eisenhower. Top rate bounced around between 81 and 92%. Then we have the Clinton years. When Clinton came in, there was a top marginal tax rate of 31%. He kicks it up to 37 and then 39. And we have healthy economic growth. The Roosevelt administration's, the New Deal is very controversial. There's a major industry, an entire major industry dedicated to proving the New Deal didn't work.
Right.
No,
all you have to do is Google Great Depression or something. There's
right.
The first 1,000 hits are right-wing talking points.
Right. However, so we're talking about the period 1933 to 1940. Over that period, all told, the economy grew 58%, even though there was a secondary recession in the middle of it.
In 37.
Right? And here's a really interesting point, because when you read the right-wing stuff, they do deal with actual statistics. It's just how they spin them. And here's the interesting concept. Okay, the right wing says the New Deal didn't work, that it was World War II that finally pulled the United States out of the Great Depression. In an economic sense, what was World War II? World War II was the New Deal in quintuplicate.
Sure.
Okay? It was a
massive public works program.
Massive public works, massive public employment. Of course, it wasn't the kind of job you might like, because you were likely to die because of it.
And you could argue that
spending, and it was very high taxes.
Yeah, and you could argue that after the war was over, the World War II actually slowed down our recovery because so much of our national wealth had been turned into bombs and dropped on Germany and Japan.
Yeah, well, actually, the World War II was hugely profitable for the United States. I mean, it was a great investment. We emerged from World War II as
the largest,
the only industrial
power
economy left standing.
Larry, can you stick around?
Yep.
We're going to take a break here. We're talking with Larry Beinhart. Larry Beinhart, BEINHART.com is his website. The author of some just brilliant pieces recently over at AlterNet.org. Stick around. We'll be right back. 16 minutes past the hour.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.